Have you ever wondered what truly makes someone unforgettable, not just admired, not just popular, but impossible to ignore, even long after they've walked away? We live in a world obsessed with filters and perfection. But what if the most magnetic quality a person can have is exactly what they've been told to hide? What if your power doesn't come from fitting in or being flawless, but from having the courage to be completely, unapologetically real? In a time when carefully curated images dominate our screens, and every scroll is a highlight reel, the loudest voices often drown out the most genuine ones. But here's the quiet truth few dare to say aloud. The deepest kind of impact doesn't come from performance. It comes from presence. What if becoming truly unforgettable has nothing to do with perfection? What if it's not about what you show, but what you reveal, when you finally stop hiding? Carl Jung, the master of the human psyche, once uncovered a powerful truth. We don't crave the flawless. We're drawn to what feels authentic. And here's the twist. The 7 paradoxical traits that make someone unforgettable aren't the ones society told you to chase. They're not about always being confident, polished, or put together. They're the traits you were taught to silence, to suppress, to bury deep inside, hoping no one would notice. But maybe, what you've been hiding is exactly what the world needs to see. We spend so much of our lives trying to look the part, perfect words, perfect timing, perfect image. But the truth? Your real power lies underneath. It's in your quiet strength. That calm in the storm. The rare ability to be fully present, without trying to perform. It's not about being the loudest voice in the room. It's about being the one they still feel, long after you've gone. And the Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius didn't speak to impress. He spoke to understand himself. Epictetus didn't crave attention. He mastered his inner world. So what if we've been chasing the wrong kind of influence all along? Because maybe, just maybe, your authenticity is your greatest form of magnetism. This is the real power move today. To own your truth so completely, so unapologetically, that you no longer wait for anyone's permission to be powerful. Because here's the thing. If you've ever felt like you were too much for some people, or maybe not enough for others, if you've poured your energy, your love, your ideas into the world, and still felt unseen, unappreciated, overlooked, then this message is for you. Because today, we're flipping the narrative. This isn't about trying harder. This isn't about becoming more likable or strategic. It's about something much more grounded, more permanent. We're diving into 7 deep truths, the kind that don't just make people remember you. They make people feel you. Not because of charm. Not because of clever tricks. But because you've become so rooted in who you are, so anchored in your presence, that no one else could possibly replace it. And if these words speak to something real inside you, if they challenge you, or give you peace in a way you didn't expect, then I'll ask just one small, honest favor. Tap that subscribe button. That's how we grow this space, together. With truth. With depth. With no filters, no performances, just realness. Now let's get into it. Because here's the truth that stings a little. Most of us are performing, and we don't even know it. We're not standing on a stage. There's no spotlight, no applause. But every single day, we're out here, performing for life. We edit our emotions the same way we edit our photos. We smile in posts, while silently battling exhaustion. We say I'm fine when we're anything but. We hold back the truth because it's easier than being vulnerable. It's safer to pretend. And after a while, it doesn't even feel like a lie anymore. It just feels normal. But that's the problem. When you perform for too long, you start forgetting who you really are underneath the act. You trade authenticity for approval. You water yourself down to fit the mold, until even the approval stops feeling satisfying. Because deep down, a part of you knows, it's not you they're approving of. It's the mask. Aristotle once said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." But how do you truly know yourself if you've spent years becoming the version the world told you to be? This isn't just a social media problem. It's not about screens or selfies. It's a mindset problem. It's about how we dim our voices in conversations, just to keep the peace. How we shrink our joy, because we're afraid of looking too much. How we sacrifice truth for comfort, not our own comfort, but someone else's. And the cost? It's high. It's losing touch with the most real, powerful, and unforgettable version of yourself. You see, there's a subtle way many of us have been conditioned to take up less space. Not physically, emotionally, spiritually, energetically. We hold our breath in conversations. We tiptoe around our own needs. We quiet our laughter, tone down our passions, and compress our brilliance. All because, somewhere along the way, someone made us believe that being our full selves was too risky, too loud, too strange, too emotional, too much of something. And so, over time, we learn to shrink. But here's the truth no one tells us. Every person who's ever changed the world was all of those things. They were bold. They were different. They were inconvenient to the status quo. And that's exactly what made them unforgettable. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. Not who your parents wanted you to be. Not who your company rewards. Not who your friends feel most comfortable around. But you. The raw, unfiltered, evolving, messy, magical, vulnerable, brilliant you. That's where your power lives. Not in some polished, carefully edited version of your life, but in the truth beneath it." Jung built his entire psychological model on a single, profound idea: individuation. That means becoming whole by integrating every part of yourself. Even the parts you're not proud of. Even the parts you were taught to hide. Even the parts you're still figuring out. Because wholeness isn't about being perfect. It's about being real. And let's be honest, wholeness is far more powerful, far more magnetic, than perfection ever could be. Think about the people who left a permanent mark on your life. Were they the ones who always looked perfect, never made a mistake, never showed a crack in their armor? Or were they the ones who made you feel like you didn't have to pretend either? The ones who were open, even when it was messy. Who laughed loudly without asking permission? Who cried when it mattered, and didn't say sorry for feeling deeply? Those are the people who stay with us. Not because they were flawless, but because they were real. And in a world drowning in noise, filters, edits, and expectations, real is revolutionary. Socrates didn't just teach philosophy. He challenged us to examine our lives, to question, to notice, to stop living on autopilot. And part of that self-examination means asking the hard questions. The uncomfortable ones. Questions like, where am I performing just to be accepted? Where have I traded truth for comfort? If you sit with it long enough, quietly, honestly, you'll begin to notice the cracks. The little spaces where your truth has been sealed off. The places where you've been compromising pieces of yourself for approval, for peace, or simply to avoid standing out. And those are the places that need your attention now. Because that's where the masks live. And when you begin to peel those masks off, slowly, honestly, courageously, something strange and powerful happens. You start to feel something wild. Something unfamiliar. Something almost dangerous. Freedom. And here's the twist most people don't tell you. When you start showing up real, they'll say you're too much. Too emotional. Too quiet. Too intense. Too soft. Too bold. Too sensitive. But if you look closely, you'll see the pattern. Every too much is just another way of saying you're harder to control. And that's exactly the point. Epictetus, the great Stoic philosopher, taught us something timeless. Freedom isn't about doing whatever you want. It's about not being owned by anything outside of you. And that includes the need for approval. The fear of discomfort. The pressure to fit into someone else's box. When you stop contorting yourself to squeeze into someone else's comfort zone. When you stop softening your truth just to avoid rejection. You reclaim your freedom. You stop living outside in, and start living inside out. And yes, it might shake things up. Plato once spoke of the shadows on the cave wall, false images we mistake for reality. For many of us, we're still living in that cave. Still mistaking the shadow version of ourselves, the version that's easier to digest, easier to explain, for the real thing. But let's be clear. There's nothing soft or palatable about authenticity. It's bold. It's raw. It's layered. It challenges people, sometimes even you. But it's worth every uncomfortable moment. Because when you stop hiding, something almost magical happens. The right people start to find you. Not the ones who merely tolerate your light. Not the ones who try to dim it or mold it. But the ones who reflect it, who see it, and recognize themselves in it. And the ones who aren't ready for your truth. They won't argue. They won't scream. They'll simply fade. Quietly. Naturally. Without a fight. And that's okay. Let them go. Because you were never meant to be a watered-down version of yourself. You weren't designed to be agreeable at the cost of being real. You were meant to be whole. To be fully expressed. To be at peace with your contradictions and complexities. Not everyone will get it. And honestly, that's more than fine. Because you don't need a crowd of strangers clapping for a version of you that isn't real. You need a handful of people. Just a few. Who see you, really see you. And love you, not in spite of it all. But because of it. Playing it safe. Putting on a smile you don't mean. Changing your tone to avoid tension. Wearing a version of yourself that fits what they're comfortable with. It becomes second nature, doesn't it? But next time you find yourself doing that, pause. And ask yourself one simple, powerful question. Is this really me? Or is this the version of me I think they'll accept? That one question? It can shift your entire reality. Because self-respect doesn't start with building walls or drawing lines. It begins in a much quieter, much deeper place. It starts with honesty, the kind you owe to no one but yourself. The kind that asks, am I being true, or am I just being polite? And here's the truth. In the end, you won't be remembered for being liked by everyone. You'll be remembered for being real with the few who mattered most. So let your presence be more than a look or a role. Let it be something they feel, something they can't quite explain but know is true. Let your authenticity speak louder than your appearance. Let your truth do the unforgettable work. Because that's what leaves a mark. Now let's talk about growth. Something we all say we want. Something we all chase. But how many of us actually understand what real growth looks like? Because true growth isn't flashy. It's not a shelf full of books. It's not crossing off goals just to say you did. Real growth is letting go of who you used to be, without losing the essence of who you are. It's about releasing the old versions of yourself, not because they were wrong or bad, but because you've outgrown them. It's the quiet decision to evolve. Not to gain more followers. Not to win more praise. But because every step forward brings you into closer alignment with your true self. Let's be honest. Some people mistake performance for growth. They shape-shift, not to rise, but to blend in. They adapt, not to expand, but to disappear. But fitting in has never been the same as belonging. Fitting in changes your outfit. Belonging? It changes your life. Plato once said, the first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself. That's the soul of transformation. It's not about putting on a show. It's not about impressing others with your new vocabulary, your new habits, or your new identity. It's about looking in the mirror and knowing, deep in your bones, that every step forward was your decision. Not something forced. Not a tactic for survival. Not a costume you wore to stay safe. But a grounded, quiet, unshakable choice. A decision not to become better for them, but to become better for you. And you know what? The Stoics knew this centuries ago. They lived it before we ever had words like alignment or authenticity. Because they understood that true peace, real power, and lasting growth all begin from within. Marcus Aurelius, emperor and philosopher, didn't just leave us with words. He left us with reminders. And one of the most powerful ones was written not to others, but to himself. He said, waste no more time arguing what a good person should be one. There was no need for long explanations. No justification. No drama. Just embodiment. Simple. Direct. Uncomplicated. He wasn't performing for praise. He was practicing presence. For the Stoics, growth wasn't about stacking achievements or building a shiny legacy. It wasn't about collecting awards, checking boxes, or becoming well-liked. It was about character. Becoming someone whose inner world was calm, resilient, and rooted. Even while the outer world was loud, chaotic, and constantly shifting. while the rest of the world ran around chasing popularity, or pretending to have it all together for the sake of appearances. The Stoics were practicing a different kind of power. A quieter kind. A deeper kind. A kind that lasts. Their focus was the inner work. The discipline of thought. The sharpening of values. The art of silence and self-mastery. And here's something we often forget. Evolving doesn't mean abandoning who you are. It's not about becoming someone else. It's about refining who you already are. You don't throw away your essence. You elevate it. You clean it. You polish it, without erasing its core. Think of it like upgrading your phone. It still looks like your phone. Still feels like it. Still functions like it. But now, it's faster. Smarter. More efficient. More powerful. That's how your identity works, too. You're not becoming a stranger to yourself. You're just removing the glitches. Cleaning up the programming. Letting go of outdated scripts written by fear, by others, by the past. And you're unlocking features you didn't even know were buried inside you. The truth is, you've always had the potential. It was never missing. Growth doesn't give it to you, it simply brings it online. Carl Jung, as we've seen before, called this journey individuation. The process of becoming whole. But here's something people don't always talk about. Part of becoming whole means letting go. Because not everything you've picked up along the way was meant to stay. Some beliefs. Some behaviors. Some identities. They weren't born from freedom. They were built from fear. From the need to please others. From trying to avoid conflict, rejection, or discomfort. And that's okay. Those patterns were survival tools. They served their purpose. They helped you navigate tough environments. They protected you when you didn't have the strength or clarity to protect yourself in any other way. But now? They're keeping you small. They're holding you in a version of yourself that you've already outgrown. A version that's too tight, too cautious, too afraid to stretch. And the moment you begin to see that, really see it with clear, compassionate eyes, is the moment everything begins to shift. That's the moment you start to evolve consciously, not just reactively. Not because you're trying to prove your worth. Not because someone doubted you. Not because you're chasing applause or validation. But because something deep within you finally understands. I deserve more than this version of me that was built only to survive. I'm ready to live. Now let's clear something up. Choosing growth doesn't mean hating who you are right now. It doesn't mean rejecting your current self or looking down on who you've been. It simply means you love yourself enough not to stay stuck. That's a powerful distinction. See, people who fear change often assume that growth is some kind of self-rejection. But that's not what this is. Real growth is the highest form of self-respect. It says, I honor who I am today. So much so, that I refuse to let this version be my final chapter. It's saying, I've come this far, and now, I'm ready to go further. That's not rejection. That's evolution. That's respect. Socrates said it best. The unexamined life is not worth living. But here's the key. When you examine your life, do it without judgment. Do it with curiosity. When you look closely, gently, you start to notice the patterns. Where you've grown. Where you've stalled. Where you've traded your values just to sit in rooms you never even wanted to be in. That awareness? That's power. Because you can't change what you won't face. But once you see it, clearly, honestly, you begin to take your power back. You realize you don't need permission. You don't need approval. You don't need perfect timing. You can start becoming your next version, today. But let's be real. Growth isn't all glowing highlight reels and inspiring breakthroughs. Sometimes, it's awkward. Sometimes, it's lonely. Sometimes, it's grieving the old self. And yes, sometimes, it's saying goodbye to people who only loved the version of you that stayed small. Let them go, the ones who only knew how to love the older, quieter, more agreeable version of you. Let go of the urge to shrink yourself to fit into a space that no longer sees you. Because you're not here to make everyone else comfortable. You're here for something far deeper. You're here to keep your soul awake. And that takes more than survival. It takes more than politeness. It takes intention, fire, and commitment. Aristotle once said, "We are what we repeatedly do." Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. And that's exactly what growth is. It's not a grand, dramatic leap. It's not a lightning strike that changes your life overnight. It's not about having one breakthrough moment and calling it transformation. Growth is daily. It's the little decisions. The consistent, quiet choices you make, when no one's watching. It's choosing reflection over reaction. Discipline over impulse. Courage over comfort. You won't always get it right. You'll stumble. You'll slip back into old patterns. But perfection isn't the goal. Progress is. Becoming the kind of person who doesn't need to announce their evolution. Because it's visible in the way you live. The way you speak. The way you carry yourself through the world. You'll know you're growing when your silence says more than your explanations. When your inner peace becomes louder than your old anxieties. When the things that used to trigger you now teach you. When you no longer chase approval, validation, or attention. Because you've made it so clear who you are. And where you're headed. That only the right people follow. And maybe right now. You're sitting quietly, wondering if it's time. If it's time to change. To rise. To evolve. To finally choose yourself. Here's your sign. Yes. Yes to clarity. Yes to progress. Yes to becoming more of who you were always meant to be. Don't wait for a crash. Don't wait for permission. Don't wait for someone else's blessing to start the life only you can live. You're allowed to change, even when others don't understand it. You're allowed to stretch, shift, evolve. To take a step away from labels, roles, and titles that no longer feel true. To let go of identities that may have once protected you, but now only hold you back. That's not betrayal. That's not selfishness. That's growth. And when your growth is rooted not in fear, not in insecurity, but in your values, it becomes something no one can question. No one can steal. No one can take away. You don't evolve so others will finally accept you. You grow because you already accept yourself. You love yourself enough to move, to rise, to keep becoming. And that is what makes you unforgettable. Not because you stayed the same to be accepted, but because you kept becoming, even when they didn't get it. Even when they walked away. Even when you stood alone. Keep becoming. Even when it's uncomfortable. Even when it's slow. Even when you can't yet see where the path leads. Keep becoming. Because we've been sold a myth, this illusion that to be loved, to be respected, to be remembered, we have to be perfect. We're told to smooth out our rough edges. Erase our history. Wear a polished version of ourselves like armor. But no one tells you the truth, until you're exhausted from trying to keep up. Perfection doesn't connect people. Pain does. Struggle does. Humanity does. Nobody bonds over your perfect highlight reel. They bond over the moments when you were broken, lost, or tired. And you still chose to stand back up. Aristotle said, knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom. But let's be honest. Real self-knowledge isn't found in strengths. It's not just in what you do well, or how you shine under pressure. It's found in the shadows. In the places you'd rather not look. In the parts of you that stumbled. That doubted. That failed. And still carried on. It's about looking those flaws in the eye and saying, that's mine. And I'm not ashamed of it. Because shame only has power when you hide. It thrives in silence. But the moment you drag it into the light, the moment you speak the truth out loud, it loses its grip. And in that moment, you take your power back. Carl Jung said it best. What you resist, persists. What you accept, transforms. That part of you. The one you've tucked away so carefully. The one you thought was too much. Too emotional. Too weird. Too complicated. Too hard to explain. That very part of you might actually be your superpower. It could be the thing that sets you apart in the best way. The thing that makes someone else feel seen. The thing that helps someone step out of their own darkness. Because you were brave enough to stop hiding yours. But when you bury it out of fear, when you push it down just to seem easier, safer, or more acceptable, you rob yourself. And you rob the world of the very thing that makes you uniquely you. We've all got scars. Some emotional. Some mental. Some physical. All of them real. And society? It's been trying to sell us cover-up for years. Cover up your sadness. Cover up your past. Cover up your sensitivity. Cover up your story. Put a filter on your pain. Make it look like it never happened. But those scars, they're not flaws. They're evidence. Evidence that you've been through something. That you felt deeply, fought bravely, and didn't give up. They are living proof that you were wounded. But you healed. That kind of resilience. That bounce-back ability. That refusal to stay down. That's what makes you magnetic. People don't remember the ones who never cracked. They remember the ones who cracked, but didn't collapse. Let's bring in the Stoics here for a moment. Epictetus taught something so simple, yet so powerful. It's not what happens to you that matters. It's how you respond to it. So your mistakes, your failures, your regrets, they are not who you are. Your response to them, that's your character. That's your identity. That's your story. And stories don't move people when everything goes right. Stories move people when the main character is tested by the fire and keeps walking anyway. Socrates once said, "Be as you wish to seem. Not perfect. Not flawless. Just real." Because people aren't searching for untouchable idols anymore. They're looking for proof. Proof that being human doesn't mean being broken. That vulnerability doesn't make you weak. And when you show up as you are, flaws and all, you become something more than inspiring. You become a mirror. A mirror that reflects back to others. You're not alone. You can be real. You can be whole, even with cracks. So now, take a breath and ask yourself, what's one part of you that you've been hiding? The story, the trait, the truth that you've kept in the shadows. Because in the final part, we're going to talk about what happens when you stop hiding it, and how your story becomes a gift not just to you, but to the world. We all have that chapter. The one we tuck away quietly. The one we never quite say out loud. Because we're afraid. Afraid people might see us differently. Afraid it might make us look weak. Afraid they might leave if they knew the full story. But what if? What if that exact chapter, the one you've been scared to share, doesn't make you weak? It makes you unforgettable? What if the thing you've carried shame around for, the experience, the choice, the scar? What if that's the very thing someone else is desperate to hear? Not to judge, but to feel less alone. Plato believed that truth wasn't just something found in the world around us. It was something deeply rooted within. And what greater truth could there be than standing tall and saying, "Yes, I've struggled. Yes, I've failed. And yes, I'm still here." That's not a confession. That's a declaration. That's you, refusing to shrink yourself for anyone's comfort. That's you, choosing to stand in your full humanity. To show the world that you're not a filtered highlight reel. You're real. Raw. And still standing. Because let's be honest, the world doesn't need another perfect persona. It needs truth. It needs depth. It needs people who have been through it and still choose kindness. People who've been broken and still show up. People who've been hurt and still care deeply. That's the kind of presence that lingers long after the room goes quiet. That's the kind of energy that doesn't just impress, it connects. And here's something you might need to hear today. You don't need to apologize for who you used to be. That old version of you? They were doing the best they could. They were surviving. They were learning. They were carrying you forward, even if they stumbled along the way. You honor that version, not by erasing them, but by building on them. Growth isn't about forgetting where you've been. It's about owning it so fully that no one, no voice, no critic, no fear, can ever use it against you again. So if you've got flaws, welcome to the club. You're not broken. You're not behind. you're real. And real people? They don't need to be perfect. They just need to be honest, resilient, and willing to keep showing up, even when the healing isn't finished. Even when the road still hurts. Even when you're scared, but you choose to keep going anyway. Because that is what makes you unforgettable. Not your polish. Not your perfection. But your presence. Your truth. And your refusal to give up, no matter how many times life tried to make you their opinions. Not your burden. Their misunderstanding. Not your shame. Their expectations. Not your script to live by. Your lesson is this. You are not here to carry every opinion, every judgment, or every expectation placed upon you. You are the chooser. This is your life. Your space. Your energy. And just like money, your energy is currency. It has value. And not everyone deserves unlimited access to it, just because they ask. Imagine how your relationships would change, completely, if instead of asking, "Do they like me?" you started asking, "Do they align with the version of me I'm becoming?" Not the version that craves applause. Not the version that shrinks or compromises just to be accepted. But the version that is grounded, evolving, and choosing peace over chaos. When that becomes your focus, everything shifts. Suddenly, you stop bending. You stop reaching. You stop performing. Because the goal is no longer how to be more likable. It's how to be more authentic. And when you live from that place, something wild happens. People begin to respect you. Not for what you do for them. Not for how easy you are to please. But for the way you carry yourself. There's a quiet, grounded kind of power in that. The kind that doesn't need an audience to exist. Plato once said, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." But real power, personal power, the kind that lasts and liberates, it comes from standards. From knowing that love, attention, and intimacy aren't things you chase. They are things you welcome. But only when they come from the right place, from the right people, at the right time. You get to decide who steps closer and who stays at the gate. Not to play games. Not to punish. But to protect your peace. And let's be honest. Peace is expensive. You fought hard to earn it. You walked through storms to get it. So don't give it away for cheap. There's a kind of confidence that doesn't need a microphone. A presence that doesn't need to impress. When you stop chasing approval, people feel it. They feel your boundaries. They feel your self-respect. And whether they realize it or not, something in them shifts. They think, this person's different. I don't want to lose this. That's what makes you unforgettable. Not because you were the loudest. Not because you were always agreeable. Not because you were flawless. But because you were whole. And you didn't hand out pieces of yourself just to be chosen. This is your reminder. You were never too much. You were never not enough. You were simply powerful. Before you ever realized it. And now, you remember. Keep choosing your truth. Keep choosing your peace. Keep becoming. Unapologetically. Unforgettably. Socrates once said, "The secret to change is to focus all your energy not on fighting the old, but on building the new." So build it. Build this version of you. The one who doesn't shrink to fit into someone else's comfort zone. The one who no longer waits to be chosen. The one who knows, deep down, that the right people will never make you question your worth. And the wrong people? Let them go. You don't need their permission to be powerful. You never did. From now on, don't measure your value by how many people approve of you, follow you, or say all the right things. Measure it by how true you are to yourself. Because when you show up with that kind of energy, that kind of clarity, that kind of intentionality, people feel it. And more importantly, you feel it. You walk differently. You speak with more certainty. You choose better. You protect your peace without guilt. And you no longer wait to be chosen. Because you already are. By you. And that changes everything. Now let's talk about the rule, the unspoken one that floats around so many of our lives. Don't feel too much. Don't care too deeply. Don't speak too passionately. Be chill. Be easy. Be low maintenance. But here's the truth we all need to say out loud. None of that creates real connection. It creates distance. It creates performance. It creates a quiet kind of emotional starvation. The kind where you're surrounded, but still unseen. Present, but unexpressed. There, but not you. If you've ever been told you're too emotional, too sensitive, too intense, too much, then let me be clear with you now. That's not a flaw. That's a gift. You feel deeply because you care. You express intensely because you're alive. You're not too much. You're just not easy to ignore. And that's your power. Carl Jung believed that the emotional world wasn't something to repress or control, but something to integrate, something to understand and grow through. He once said, "There is no coming to consciousness without pain. Because real awakening isn't neat. It isn't convenient. It isn't always welcome in a world built on numbing out. But the intensity you carry, the part of you that cries at sunsets, that breaks open at truth, that won't let apathy win, it's not there to break you. It's there to wake you. It's the part of you that won't let life stay surface level. The part that craves meaning, depth, connection, and truth. So if you've ever doubted yourself for caring too much, loving too hard, feeling too deeply, let this be the moment you stop apologizing. Because that fire in you isn't chaos. It's consciousness. It's aliveness. It's you, unfiltered, undiluted, unforgettable. You're not here to water yourself down just to make others feel safe at the surface level. Yes, your depth may challenge people. Yes, your truth may stir up reactions they weren't ready for. Yes, some may back away the moment you stop performing and start being real. But that discomfort, it usually says more about their emotional limitations than it does about your emotional intelligence. And since we're here, let's talk about intelligence, not just the kind you can measure with an exam, but the kind that shows up in how you love, how you grieve, how you stay open when the world teaches you to close. Emotional depth is not weakness. It's wisdom. Aristotle spoke of moderation as a virtue. But he didn't mean to suppress your nature. He meant, master it. Direct it. Feel fully, without drowning in it. Love fiercely, without losing yourself. That's the fine line between chaos and courage. And let's be clear. Your ability to feel deeply, in a world that numbs, avoids, escapes, scrolls, hides behind humor and distraction. That is courage. Because most people are building walls. Most people are curating masks. And here you are. Still showing up. Still feeling. Still choosing to live with your heart open. That's not too much. That's rare. So why do they label you that way? Why do people call you too emotional, too intense, too complicated? Because intensity can't be controlled. Because presence calls out performance. Because honesty? It doesn't play by the rules of comfort. Your passion makes them question their apathy. Your tears make them face the numbness they've spent years protecting. Your truth? It makes their lies harder to believe in. So rather than rise to meet you, rather than face their own disconnection, they label you the problem. But that label? That's not truth. That's projection. Even the Stoics, the masters of control, of discipline, of inner calm, never told us to erase emotion. They told us to understand it. To work with it. To direct it, not suppress it. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. That includes your emotional world." So no, you don't need to tone yourself down. You don't need to become easier, lighter, or less. You just need to learn to channel your fire. To guide your passion, not deny it. To let your emotions inform you, not rule you. That's what strength looks like. That's emotional maturity. That's leadership. That's what sets you apart in a world desperate for something real. Socrates once said. And in the final page, we'll return to that wisdom, bringing everything together in one last declaration of identity, truth, and becoming. Let's finish what we started. And so we return to the wisdom of Socrates. The one truth that started it all. To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom. But what does that really mean? To know yourself means more than just knowing your strengths. It means knowing how deeply you feel. And not making yourself wrong for it. It means honoring the truth that your sensitivity is not a flaw. It's awareness. It's your built-in radar for what's real and what's not. It's the reason you walk into a room and feel what no one is saying out loud. It's why your intuition speaks loudest in silence. It's why your relationships reach depths that others only skim the surface of. And that's not too much. That's just you refusing to live small. Refusing to numb out. Refusing to fake indifference. Refusing to detach from things that matter to your soul. That doesn't make you difficult. That makes you authentic. And in a world that teaches people to shut down, close off, and filter out, you're choosing to stay open. That's not just bravery. That's power. And it's unforgettable. So the next time someone tells you, you're too much, smile. Look them in the eye. And simply say, then go find less. Because you are done shrinking to fit inside someone else's comfort zone. You are here to expand into your full, emotional, passionate, beautiful power. And the people who are meant for you? They won't ask you to shrink. They'll meet you there. They'll rise to match your depth. They'll celebrate your passion, not pull away from it. They won't flinch from your honesty. They'll recognize it as truth. Because people who feel deeply love deeply. And people who love deeply, they change lives. So don't dim that. Don't dilute it. Don't clip your own wings because someone else fears your flight. Be all of you. Be bold. Be passionate. Be honest. Be grounded. Because that is how you leave your mark. Not by being agreeable, but by being real. There's a quiet, steady kind of power that awakens inside you. The moment you realize, I deserve more. Not in a loud, boastful way, but in that calm, unwavering, grounded presence that says, I know who I am. And I'm not afraid to be it. And that is what makes you unforgettable. It's not loud. It's not dramatic. It's just clear. It's like a switch flips. Suddenly, all those old patterns, the one-sided relationships, the draining conversations, the endless tolerating, the pretending, they stop. Not because the world changed, but because you did. Because once you know what you're worth, the begging ends. The chasing ends. You no longer reach for scraps of love. You stop collecting crumbs of attention. You're no longer starving for validation. You're holding out for what's real. Epictetus, one of the great Stoic philosophers, once said, never value anything as profitable to yourself, which shall compel you to break your promise, to lose your self-respect, or to hate any man. Translation? If you have to betray yourself to keep someone, it's already too expensive. And when you truly understand that, you become different. You stop playing small. You stop bending backward to be understood by people who don't even try. You stop staying in spaces where your peace is constantly compromised. You don't yell. You don't explain. You just go, without slamming the door. And the people who can do that? The ones who walk away quietly, gracefully, without guilt, without bitterness. They are dangerous. In the best way possible. Because they can't be manipulated. They can't be guilt-tripped. They can't be emotionally hijacked. Why? Because they've made a decision. If it costs me my peace, it's too expensive. Most people aren't afraid of losing someone who needs them. They're afraid of losing someone who doesn't, but still chose them. That kind of presence? That kind of grounded love? That kind of self-respecting connection? It's rare. And it's magnetic. When you know what lifts your energy and what drains it, you stop making decisions from loneliness and start making them from clarity. That clarity makes people think twice. It makes them pause. It makes them earn their place in your life, instead of assuming they'll always have it. Carl Jung once said, the most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely. But once you do, you stop waiting for others to do it for you. You stop hoping that love will arrive with conditions attached. You stop performing. You show up as you. And when that happens, when you are no longer acting for applause, or shrinking to keep the peace, or bending to earn your worth, people finally see the real you. That version? The grounded one. The self-respecting one. The one who sets standards without shame. The one who won't play small anymore. That version is the one who never needs to prove anything again. Because simply standing in your truth is enough. And that is the you they'll never forget, and once you start showing up as the grounded, honest, self-respecting version of you, people feel it. They sense it. And they don't want to lose it. Why? Because that kind of presence? It's stabilizing. It's refreshing. It's real. It's the rare kind of energy that makes others feel safer, clearer, braver, just by being near it. But let's be clear. Boundaries aren't walls. They're not about pushing people away. They're not cold. They're not cruel. They're filters. They're how you let the right people in. They're how you keep your soul from getting worn out by people who don't know how to respect it. Boundaries say, here's what I welcome. Here's what I won't tolerate. Not because I'm unkind, but because I've grown clear. That clarity is gold. That clarity is protection. That clarity keeps your energy safe. Keeps your heart whole. Keeps your life from turning into a constant recovery zone, where you're always repairing damage that should have never been allowed in the first place. Socrates once said, "The secret of change is to focus all your energy, not on fighting the old, but on building the new." So maybe it's time. Time to stop fixing what was never yours to fix. Time to stop over-explaining your worth to people who never learned how to listen. Time to stop twisting yourself into a shape that keeps others comfortable but leaves you fractured. Maybe it's time to build something new. A new standard. A new self-honoring. A new way of showing up that doesn't bend just to keep the peace. Because peace that costs your self-worth isn't peace. It's self-abandonment in disguise. And here's what no one tells you. Knowing what you deserve doesn't mean you think you're better than anyone else. It just means you've finally, fully decided, I am not less. And that decision? It changes everything. It shifts how you speak. How you walk into a room. How you love. How you choose. You stop accepting half effort. Half presence. Half truths. You stop confusing attention with affection. You don't demand perfection. But you do require consistency. You don't need fairy tales. You want honesty. You stop asking, am I expecting too much? And start asking, why was I settling for so little? Aristotle said, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence, then, is not an act, but a habit. So let self-respect become your habit. Let saying no when something feels off become second nature. Let choosing peace over popularity become your way of life. Let showing up clear, calm, whole, and unapologetically you be not just your goal, but your new standard. And if they say you've changed, smile. Because yes, you have. You've stopped asking for space in rooms that don't honor your voice. And you've started building doors where walls used to be. And that's not too much. That's who you were always meant to be. Our boundaries, here comes the next challenge. To move with that truth, knowing the world will adjust. The wrong ones will fall away. The right ones? They'll rise. They'll recognize you. They'll match your clarity, your depth, your peace. So here's your invitation. Revisit your standards today. Not your wish list. Not your fantasy version of love, friendship, or success. But your non-negotiables. The truths that protect your peace. That protect your time. That protect you. What are you no longer available for? What behaviors will you no longer explain away? What expectations do you hold, not because you're demanding, but because you've finally decided that you matter? Because once those boundaries are in place, something shifts. You stop waiting to be treated right. You stop wondering if someone will show up with kindness, consistency, or care. You start expecting it. And that changes everything. Now let's talk about love for a moment. Because not all love feels like freedom. There's a kind of love that feels like pressure. Like weight. It sounds like, don't leave me. I need you to be okay. It's not malicious. It's not abusive. But it's heavy. It's the kind of love that, without meaning to, suffocates instead of supports. And here's why. When love comes from emptiness, when it's born out of lack, loneliness, or fear, it becomes a transaction. A subtle plea for emotional survival. You're not truly offering love. You're offering need. And no matter how sincere it feels, no matter how deep the longing, that kind of love will eventually exhaust both people involved. Because love that asks someone else to fill the void in you isn't really love. It's dependency dressed as devotion. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And he was right. Because to accept yourself fully, flaws, pain, past, all of it, means giving up the fantasy that someone else will complete you. But here's the beauty. That's also exactly where real love begins. You're no longer handing people the shattered pieces of your heart and begging them to put you back together. You're not asking for someone to rescue you. Because now, you are whole. And when you're whole, your love no longer weighs people down. It lifts them up. It becomes light. It becomes peace. It becomes something that soothes instead of smothers. See, many people mistake intensity for love. They think clinging equals connection. They confuse urgency with depth. But real connection? It's not built on fear. It's not rooted in the panic of losing someone. It's not tangled in desperation. Real love is built on freedom. The freedom to choose someone again and again. Not because you need them to survive, but because you want to walk beside them, without fear, without dependency. And that kind of love? It's rare. Because it's not about possession. It's about presence. It says, I'm here, because I choose to be. Not because I'll fall apart if I'm not. The Stoics taught us this, too. that our peace should never be held hostage by things we can't control. Epictetus once said, "Only the educated are free." And in this case, he didn't just mean intellectually educated. He meant emotionally educated. Free from the need to be validated to feel worthy. Free from giving love just to get something back. Free from defining your worth through someone else's attention. Because when you've done the inner work, when you've healed your wounds, when you've filled your own cup, you stop chasing love. You radiate it. And radiance? Radiance is unforgettable. Think about it. When someone walks into a room with calm confidence, with a joy that doesn't rely on anyone else to ignite it, you feel it. You feel grounded in their presence. You feel safer, lighter, seen. That kind of person doesn't demand attention. They attract it. Not because they stroke egos, but because their presence awakens something in others. Something real. Something stable. Something sacred. And here's the truth. You don't get that kind of presence from someone who's emotionally starving. You get it from someone who knows they're already full. And when they give you love, it's not a cry for help. It's a gift. A sacred offering. An open hand, not a lifeline. Socrates once said, "The hottest love has the coldest end." Because love born from obsession, from neediness, from emotional voids, it burns too fast. And it collapses under its own weight. But when your love starts from fullness, from peace you've earned, from joy you've discovered in your own stillness, it doesn't burn out. It doesn't break down. It evolves. It breathes. It grows. It walks beside someone, instead of asking to be carried. This is why it's so important to fill your own cup. Not later. Not when the right person finally shows up. Now. Because if your cup is empty, you'll keep draining every connection, trying to quench a thirst only you can satisfy. But if your cup is full, if you've spent time healing, loving yourself, and building from the inside out, then what you share with others isn't need. It's abundance. And in the final chapter, we'll return to that truth. How becoming full, clear, and whole isn't just the key to unforgettable love. It's the key to an unforgettable life. It radiates from who you are. And the love you give, it flows from your overflow. Not from scarcity. Not from emptiness, but from abundance. And the people who deserve to be close to you, they won't try to drink from your source. They won't try to take from your center. They'll be nourished by your light. They'll feel inspired by your clarity. And more importantly, they'll honor it. Aristotle believed that the highest form of love wasn't romantic. It was philia, virtuous friendship. A bond between two souls who seek the good in one another. Not control. Not possession. Not a role to fill their lack. But a mirror that reflects their highest self. And that kind of love? It doesn't cling. It doesn't panic. It doesn't need to prove itself every second. It strengthens both people. Helps them grow. Expands their capacity to be who they truly are. But here's the thing. You can only arrive at that kind of love when you're already whole. You can't fake it. You can't substitute presence for performance. So ask yourself honestly, am I giving love from a wound? Or from wisdom? Am I offering my heart from fear? Or from freedom? Because love should never feel like a lifeline. It should feel like light. It should feel like clarity. Like space. Like home. And the truth? You don't need someone to complete you. You never did. You need someone who complements you. Who adds to the wholeness you fought hard to earn. Who honors your fullness instead of trying to fill your silence with noise. That kind of presence? It's rare. It's unforgettable. And it's the kind of energy people are terrified to lose. Not because it feeds their ego. But because it awakens something sacred in them, too. So take care of yourself first. Not in a selfish way. But in a sacred one. Fill your soul. Know your worth. Build your peace. Guard your energy like it's sacred, because it is. And when you love, let it be a reflection of your fullness. Let it be a gift. Let it be light, not a plea to be rescued. Because the right ones, the ones who are meant to walk beside you, not ahead of you, not behind. They'll see you. They'll feel your frequency. And they'll rise to meet you there. You are not too much. You are not hard to love. You are not here to shrink. You are here to live, to love, to shine fully. And those who are meant for you? They'll never ask you to be less. They'll meet you in your fullness. And never, ever, forget you, and the ones who are meant for you. They won't just stay. They'll protect your light. They'll guard your peace. Not because they feel entitled to your presence, but because they know they're standing in the presence of something rare. And the best part? You'll know it, too. You won't second-guess your worth. You won't search for reassurance. You won't wonder if you're too much or not enough. Because the most unforgettable energy you'll ever carry is the quiet, unwavering knowing that you are already whole. No need to prove. No need to perform. No need to chase. Just being is enough. Just choosing yourself, again and again, becomes the revolution. And when you do that, when you choose your truth, when you choose your peace, the right people will never ask you to shrink. They'll rise with you. They'll expand alongside you. They'll honor the journey, because they're on one of their own. So if this message stirred something inside you, if it cracked something open, if it reminded you of who you are and who you've always been, then don't stop here. There's another video waiting for you right now. Right here on the screen, that will take you even deeper. Deeper into this truth. Into your self-awareness. Into your becoming. Trust me. You don't want to miss it. And before you go, thank you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for feeling this with us. Thank you for being part of Stoic Journal. This space isn't just about ancient philosophy or quotes from the past. It's about you. About becoming. Slowly. Intentionally. Powerfully. It's about the real work. The quiet work. The everyday choices that shape your life from the inside out. So remember, The journey continues. One breath at a time. One truth at a time. One becoming at a time. And we'll be right here, whenever you're ready. For the next step they let you go thinking you were forgettable. Thinking they could find someone better. But what they didn't know is that your silence was not surrender. It was rebirth. You didn't chase. You didn't beg. You became. You built peace in the storm. You walked alone with dignity. You chose growth over attention, and strength over noise. Now, your absence speaks louder than your presence ever did. And one day, whether they admit it or not, they'll look back and realize they lost something they'll never find again. Not because you punished them, but because you respected yourself enough to rise. That's how you become unforgettable.